Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to actually be discussing the reopening of the workplace. So, kind of getting everybody back to our offices. Today, I'm Andrew Gotron. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Autocene. And what I'll be doing today is I'll be giving you a look and insight into Autocene's Enterprise Application Platform, or our EAP. You'll hear me say throughout the presentation today. What you can do is at any time you can drop your questions into the chat. We'll definitely cover those either during the presentation or near the end of the presentation and kind of cover those, make sure that we got everybody covered. Of course, you can always reach out to us after this presentation to ask about if pricing or certain things that we covered today. So what are we covering? So we are covering today, we're going to be talking about reopening. So the general idea of, okay, how do we get people back into the building? How do we keep track of those people? Kind of contact tracing, health screening, so COVID-19 attestations, and talking about kind of scheduling for social distancing. So things like conference rooms we'll be talking about, and we'll also be talking about, I guess, sections of the building that this can also apply to. So pretty much any resource that you're looking to schedule for. We will also be talking about telework as well. So as people are kind of coming back into the office, not everybody is going to be coming back into the office. And over most of our customers, we see that kind of soft rollout happening. So this idea that select business units, select groups, or parts of those groups are going to be coming back, working partially from the office and also kind of partially from home as well. Okay. So for today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting here. So right on my screen right now, this is the Autocene web application. The Autocene web application is what it sounds like. So it's a fully fledged web application that is either hosted by us or it can be deployed on premise. It's a web page and a portal that everybody will have access to, or certain parties will have access to. So you can face this internally, you can face this strictly externally, or you can have a combination of both. So both internal and external parties. Now, how do we get at this? How do we log in? How do we engage with it? So you're going to be seeing a number of different applications in which I'm doing things. I'm engaging with that application. Those applications that can stand by themselves. So you don't even need to go through the process that I'm about to discuss. But if we do need to log in, if we do need to engage with user accounts, there's a number of different ways that we do that. So number one, for smaller organizations. So I'm talking about organizations that may not have an Active Directory that's in good condition, or an HRIS system, so a human resource system like Workday or PeopleSoft engaged. You can host your user base within Autocene. It's also a good place to manage your external users as well if you're not leveraging those Active Directory systems or those human resource systems. Now, if you are a larger organization, you may have a number of these systems that you're going to be leveraging. So multiple Active Directories. So customers of ours have 2 to 3 Active Directories. There could be Azure Active Directory online as well. And depending on your setup, you could have a waterfall of kind of how these are engaging with themselves. That could be coupled with things like supplemental HRIS systems. So PeopleSoft, Workday, those types of systems that you could be engaging with that provide that broader profile for the employee that's engaging with those systems and the solutions that you've built around those systems. So I'm talking about like things like Salesforce or your BPM systems. Now, regardless of kind of how you're logging in, smaller organization, you're going to be doing something like this. You're going to be logging in with your credentials. Larger organization, Autocene can engage with those HRIS and Active Directory elements through single sign-on. We do this through ADFS, so federated services. Pass that token, pass that authentication through multi-factor gates that you may have set up or through that clearance to allow that user to go through. Now, what happens when you log in? You're going to be hitting the home page of the portal. And just for today, the demo environment here has a bunch of different widgets, so blocks and kind of displays that kind of give you a general idea of what we can begin displaying out to that user set. So when I log in, the display that you have for your user experience can be face dependent on that user. So you can see that I'm logged in as myself up here. I have a user profile. There may be a number of different elements that we're pulling from those external systems like Active Directory and HRIS. Those are going to couple into what kind of user experience I'm going to be engaging with. Now, colors, branding, layout, all of those things are configurable with your Autocene environment. So you can see here, this is branded as Autocene. You could have your logo, you can have your color scheme, so your branding colors that you normally engage with. You can have certain aspects of how this laid out for user experience. If you have a neurodivergent workflow force that you have to accompany for, this is when you can start engaging with elements behind that as well. So you can have visual oriented user experiences, you can have rollout user experience, so on and so forth. Now, from the home page, how do we begin to navigate towards the applications that I want to engage with? So we have a couple of apps that we're going to be talking about today. How do I engage with those? What is the context and where I'm engaging those, and how are workflow elements, if there is workflow modules attached to these applications, how are those interacting, and what can I do? So if you take a look to the left here, where my mouse is, you can see my applications, actions, status, drafts, delegates, and our FAQ system, or the help tab. The My Applications. This tab is everything that the environment has for that user. This is where all your applications are going to sit. So if I'm in human resourcing, I may only have onboarding applications, or I may have human resource specific applications for myself. If I'm a mix of two groups, let's say that I'm a part of like human resources and I'm a part of like the general employee role, I may have one or more applications added to that list. This is where you're going to begin engaging with your applications by clicking the Start menu and going towards those applications. Quickly, for the rest of the tabs here, the Actions tab, this is where your actions are stored. So if your application has a workflow element behind it, it may ask you to take action on something. So you can see I have a number of building staff sign-ins here and other applications asking me to do stuff. For the status, drafting, and delegates, for status, everything's stored in Autocene. That means application metadata, workflow data, audit trails engaging with these applications. It's all stored in that SQL backend. So Autocene is based on a Microsoft SQL server, meaning that that information is going there, and you have access to that information either by the API of Autocene, or guess what? We let you intersect with that data on the database backend as well. So you have full availability to pull, use your data. We don't store anything. We don't hold anything. We don't hide anything. Drafting, delegations, and the help. So drafting, really self-explanatory. If I want to save a page, like save a session and come back and work on it, you can do that. You can edit those drafts. Delegations, we'll talk about this throughout the presentation because there may be one or more different things that we're talking about. The Delegates tab here is for the user. It's going to pull up all the different categories of applications, and you can set your delegations in that. And we'll walk through that in a bit here. And lastly, your help tab. So what documentation, what kind of processes, what supporting documentation like PDFs, Excel sheets, stuff like that, deal with your application sets in that environment. You can have multiple Autocene environments. You can see the URL at the top here, that demo.autocene. You can have multi-tenant environments. So you can have an environment strictly for human resources, or an environment strictly for this kind of work from home aspect, right? So let's get into the cool stuff. Let's talk about the actual applications themselves here. So my applications, the first thing that we're going to be talking about today is actually scheduling. So scheduling of resources inside the building. Scheduling is going to be a big part about coming back to the office, because we have to ensure that groups of people are being kept apart and we're not kind of clustering groups of people in a central location. These are things like conference rooms, meeting rooms, or kind of general areas that you may want to use for business needs. Most commonly, you're probably going to be dealing with the first two, conference rooms and meeting rooms, or some sort of location, maybe like a presentation room as well, or a room with specific things in it, like a projector or something along those lines. So how can we deal with that? What I have today is actually a scheduling application. This is one of our library applications. So I'm going to hit start. It's going to open up the application's user interface here. And that interface is basically laid out by how the application works. So as I begin kind of going through this application, buttons, clickables like drop downs, text boxes, all those kinds of different things, those are configurable to what you're using that application for. Now, what is a library application? So here at Autocene, we actually have a pretty extensive library of application templates. So these are applications that have already had some foundational work done to them to around a certain idea. And this is one of those. So the scheduling application in this regard is actually tailored towards interpreters, but at the core of it, the framework of this application is based on the idea of scheduling something. So you can actually swap out interpreters and customers and that for different items that you want to schedule for. And it's really easy to do that. You just go in, you change out the labels, you add a couple things that may deal with that specific item. Okay. I like to make the analogy. It's kind of like a Word document. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly open up like Microsoft Word here. You can start a Word document from scratch. You can do that in Autocene. You can start your application building from scratch, or you can take a template like our library application and start from there. So if I was going to start like a new application or start a new resume in Word, you may like the layout of what it's doing here, but you may want to like take out that person's picture because that's not you. You may want to change your name and stuff like that. This type of idea is the same idea around our applications when you're building those out. So I want you to keep that in mind. You can drag and drop this into your environment today, change out a couple things, have that rolling, and you have a scheduling application for one or more things. Now, how does this work? So scheduling app, we have a general calendar here that you can begin booking on. So you can see that I have a couple books for this specific day, but you can view that day, you can add a book for that. So as I click that button to add an appointment, this would be like adding a reservation for your conference room. You have a bunch of additional metadata that may or may not deal with that conference room. So in this case, we're booking like an interpreter, but it could be the conference room itself. And let's say that for today, I want to book our webinar presentation. Maybe we started at 11 a.m. and maybe it goes for like an hour. Well, I may want to book that for that time period. You can have your status, and as I'm picking these different elements here, so you can see that, well, we've pre-populated the date and all that, but drop-down lists and kind of search features, you can pull those from external kind of data locations. I'm talking about like a database, an API or a service. It could be like a SOAP or RESTful service that you pull from. So status active, status may or may not deal with your conference room. Again, we could switch out the labels on this. I may want to search out a specific thing. In this case, we're doing like interpreters. Well, I may want somebody who can do sign language, ASL. I may have a specific sex that I want to have for that interpreter. Again, no preference. And then based on those, I can find an interpreter who deals with ASL. It might be myself here. Again, as I'm picking and choosing, you can see different pop-ups of the interface popping up here. Again, the metadata is, and the context in which we're scheduling is not as important as the idea of the application itself. I could swap this out for a conference room just to kind of keep that in mind. So I can save that. What's going to happen? I'm going to save it. It's going to save it to the calendar here. You can see that appointment's been added for this date. And if I wanted to go to yesterday, I could see those bookings as well. The good thing about this application is that you can have this in a general area that users can go into, go to the URL. So this application could be faced by itself. We can also interact with a group calendar. So if your organization is on something like Gmail or an Exchange server like Outlook Online or O365, these kind of calendar we can engage with the actual booking here, and you can have that generally. And you can see the purpose of why we're booking. You can work with those people who are booking out that resource. You can also see that I received an email in that time. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to pop open our email, and you can see that an appointment was added. So you can have things like notifications begin kicking off here. So in this case, I have an email notification, but it could be things like SMS. So that text message that you send out. It could be a different type of notification. It's really up to you on kind of what kind of components you want to take away or add to your application. Okay. So that's cool. We can book things. We can reserve things. We can work with other groups and have a general area for kind of grabbing those resources. Well, that's cool. We can do that inside the building. But how do we get people inside the building and kind of track who's going where, who's doing what, and whether or not they've engaged with kind of risky COVID behaviors. So we may need COVID attestation. So the second app that I'm going to talk about today is our building tracking. So this is contact tracing, and this is kind of like monitoring sign-ins and sign-outs out of a building. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do this, and I'll kind of bring those ideas up as we go. But if you have been out and about lately, not a lot of us have, but if you've gone places where maybe you've gone to a restaurant that is doing patio dining outside because it's allowed in your area, you may have noticed that there is contact tracing in your area. There may not be, but the idea is to track people who are coming in and out of that location just in case something bad happens, right? So how do we do that? Well, we have a set of applications here. You can see we have a staff dashboard. We have a vendor dashboard, so external parties like contract and vendors that you may be dealing with. These are like third parties who are not a part of your organization. And our general building staff sign-in. So again, I'm going to start that application by selecting the Start button here, and it's going to bring up the user interface. Now, how do we present this in a safe and readily available manner for people to engage with? And there's a couple of different ways that we have our customers actually engaging with these building-based sign-ins. So number one, the quickest and easiest way that I've seen this done is that there's actually a hot link that are given to either external vendors or to staff themselves. So what I mean by that is you have a URL, you could go to that URL, you can fill that in from your smart device and engage with that. That's great, readily available. However, what happens if we do not have the ability to give that person this URL or give them the ability to go to this page, right? So this application could be hosted without logging in. I just want you to keep that in mind. How do we give that to that person? Other customers are using QR-based systems. So QR code. Autocene can be faced on a mobile device, that means that mobile devices will resize to your application so that you can display that. The QR code way is a great way of doing this. Again, we've seen this out and about, or at least I have. I'm sure many of you who are watching right now have engaged with some QR code because we're kind of turning to a paperless area in which we're dealing with COVID-19. So I'll bring up that restaurant analogy again. You may not get menus anymore. There may be a QR code that you just scan and it pops up the menu. It goes to that website. That is what our customers are doing as well. So QR code at the door for staff sign-in. You scan it, it opens up a page, and then you begin engaging with this application. Now, who's engaging with this application? For this staff sign-in application, foundationally, there's kind of two modes to it. There's an employee mode, and then there's a vendor mode to it. Right now, I'm on the employee mode. So I have the ability to select what department I'm in, and then search out my employee code. So again, we're calling out to external sources. This is mostly human resource oriented, but you can call out to those external resources. You can see that here's my employee name. I can select that. It's going to pre-populate all that information for me. That's great because we don't want this to be a burden. We're pre-filling information. I don't want my employee to have to come to the building. They're just getting back into the office and great, now I have to fill out my name, my address, email, building, cell phone, emergency contact, all that kind of information over and over and over again, because that is a burden to the employee and they will not want to do that certain aspect. They want something that is not intrusive in their day-to-day lives. So let's make that easy. Search out your employee ID, pre-fill that information. So what's next? So in terms of this application, we have a sign-in date, and most of the staff that we're monitoring are maintenance and cleaning because we don't have people in the office back yet. So these types of questions about kind of what you're doing, things you're engaging with, we can lean on certain departments and business units. So if I scroll up a bit here, because I'm in the department as a custodian engineer, that means it may be specifically around job duties that pop out here. Applications roll out based on what you're wanting that user experience to be. This is a great way of kind of giving relevant information to employees as they're going through the process. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'm here for cleaning today. Here are the building policies and procedures. This is kind of like a miniature terms and conditions of what you're engaging with. So you can see we need face mask all the time. We need to maintain distance between people, 6 feet, 2 meters, whatever your location is. PPE, hey, am I sharing my mask with people? Probably not. You don't want to do that, but there may be communal PPE elements that your organization is doing, right? These building policies and procedures, these are configurable. Again, I go back to that idea of the word template. You can take away from this application. You can add to this application. You can change colors, change context. It's all up to you. The framework is there to get you off and running. So I'm going to say yes. You can see that, hey, I got a little flag right here, making sure that I acknowledge that I have read these. And that means the employee understands that, hey, I've read this, so I should not be in trouble when I'm questioned whether or not I read this, right? Now, at the end of the staff sign-in, for this application, there is a small attestation for COVID at the bottom. And this will kind of lean into our next application that we're going to talk about. However, these types of things are going to be our trigger for this application. So I could say that, hey, no, I haven't traveled. Have I been in close contact with somebody? No. Well, I may have a fever or sore throat, so yes. By selecting yes here, this is a flag in our business logic for this application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit the page. Now, submitting in Autocene is going to take all the data, so the questions here, what's been pre-filled out, who the profile is, and it's going to submit that. If there was not a yes here, that would be it. We've submitted, it's in the clear, we're all good. However, because I selected yes, this application is actually going to start a miniature workflow behind the scenes. Okay, so because I am my own supervisor on this environment, it's going to go to me. However, it could be based on supervisors, it could be based on a team lead. I've seen customers with COVID specific leads that this goes to, so on and so forth. And you can see here I received an email notification letting me know that there's been a sign-in and there's actually an action to take here. Well, what is that action? Well, because that person indicated that they may have symptoms by selecting yes here, I can begin an investigation into what's going on with that. Again, your application does not have to work like this. In this customer's case, they want it to go to the investigative stage. But you could simply have the idea that you're recording information and people signing in and signing out. So as I go to that action, you can see it's an entirely different page of information that I'm filling out. Was there multiple visits? Kind of engaging with different elements that I'm looking to record in terms of this application. Again, we're using my profile, so we can pre-fill out elements like this at the bottom. Now, how do I have oversight over all the sign-ins? I can see that single people are signing in. That's great. How do I have oversight over all the sign-ins? And that's when we start getting into dashboard applications here. So I'm going to open up the vendor dashboard. And this application specifically is for giving us information about people who have signed in. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back in time here. And let's say that I want to deal with this specific date here. So I'm just going to put in this date. Let's go with the 22nd here. You can see I can filter the dates here. So these filters are allowing me to go through different aspects of information. Filters are not default. So from to building company, these types of things are not default to every application. Filters are based on the information you want to filter. So if I was doing a procurement process, well, it may be on types of procurement, right? Good. So we have building lists, company lists that we might be dealing with. Maybe we want to look at only cleaners or us, so on and so forth. You can begin filtering that information. Well, you can see here we have 4 flags. So you can see it's color coded. You can do color indications. You can do different flagging. But these 4 here are things that we want to look at. Green is somebody who's been clear and gone through the process, right? So if we want to look at the details for Brock here, we can go into the details, pull all that information back, and view what they answered. And you can see that Brock indicated that, hey, I've been in contact with somebody with COVID. Again, this kind of idea, this dashboard system allows you to have different tiers of information. So you can see that I drilled down onto the information, and I can have general information as well. So if we go back to the front page, and it's a great way of using your applications as something to build for relevant dashboards that you can hand to your supervisors or somebody who manages you, that you usually pull things like CSVs or Excel reports on. So that's cool. Hey, we got people coming into the building now. What about strict kind of COVID attestation that we can do? Well, if you're not looking at just strict building sign-ins, you can do COVID-19 attestations. It's a great way of just tracking base people, like people and base symptoms that you want to monitor in terms of who's going to what job site at what time. So for this customer here, it's basically all around the idea of assessing yourself and ensuring that you understand that based on my selections, I may or may not be allowed to go to work today. So you can see on my profile here, based on the things I have access to, I've already started to pre-fill information out. But again, you can have people put in information. So I'm just going to put in Autocene Building 1. And let's say that I'm my own supervisor today because I'm the boss. And I can put in my own email there. Well, now I can go into the self-screening questions. Have I had close contact? Again, just like the building check-in, these types of questions I'm pretty sure you've all engaged with. So, no, I've not had contact. Have I had a fever? Maybe I have, or maybe I'm having some physical symptoms. Well, based on those questions, well, guess what? You answered yes. You should probably notify my supervisor and stay home. So, telework as directed, so engage with teleworking, which is our next application we're going to be talking about. Or stay home, use some accrued leave, kick your feet up. So that's cool. We're monitoring people. We have health gates to engage with. How do we manage people who are wanting to work from home certain days and work from the office certain days? There's a lot of overhead that goes into that. And that's going to be our next application here, is our telework agreement. Now, a little bit of background, just to kind of frame this, because these are the kind of problems that we're going to be start to see as people are returning to the office in kind of these soft launches. Number one, your entire workforce is probably not going to be going to the office all at once. There's going to be some limitations. There's going to be partial weeks that management or higher ups want to engage with soft rollouts. That means part of HR, part of finance are only coming in. Or maybe single business units are managing what teams are coming in at what specific days. It's a lot of work because you may think, okay, John and Wendy can come in. They're usually good in finance. They do the books and all that kind of stuff. But what resources do we need to support those two people? Hey, it's just two people, right? But you need maybe some overhead in terms of a supervisor for John and Wendy. You may need additional resource support like IT. So you may need IT personnel. You may need other resources in terms of staff to manage that room. These are things that are going to start coming into question, okay? So it may just be two people at the start, but you have to understand that we're all connected. We all work together with colleagues of ours. There's interconnectivity. We lean on each other to make sure things go smoothly, right? So how can we start to manage that? With this customer here, they actually have a telework application process. And this is great because it kind of showcases multiple kind of stakeholders buying into an application and ensuring that we get everything we need out of this to ensure that we have a proper telework arrangement for that employee. So how does a new employee come in and apply for telework? So I can modify an existing application or I can start a new application here. Again, the user interface is going to guide me, and this is kind of that rollout that I talked about earlier. So new application. I'm going to select that, and there's a couple of sections that we can start to go through here. So I'm on section A. I have a new application number, and we're going to start going through kind of the eligibility and self-assessment. Self-assessment is going to give us kind of a general score at the end to see if that employee is a good fit for teleworking in certain aspects, right? So where do I work? I may be a regional administrator. Have I reviewed the eligibility requirements? I may say yes. I'm pretty sure we should review that before we start that, right? So now we're going to go through our self-assessment. You can read that up at the top here. There's particular traits around our employee on whether or not you're a good fit for telework, right? And you can review this in the telework handbook or stuff like that. Again, this is a good framework to kind of kickstart off because you may or may not have had this conversation already inside your workplace to talk about these certain items. So do you have the ability to be organized and do your job, tasks, and responsibilities remotely? Well, what does that mean? Well, I can click the little information bubble here and I can pop that out. This is a great way of providing help at each section in your application. There may be certain acronyms or certain language that you want to talk about. Slap in a help module into that section. It can be based on questions. It can be based on button clicks. It's up to you on kind of how you manage that. So yeah, I can do that. Do you have a appropriate telework environment? Does that mean that I have a good office to work from? So, safe, comfortable workspace where I can concentrate. Pretty important for a person to do work effectively, right? So, again, as I'm going through these questions, it's just we're basically scoring in the background to make sure that this person is eligible and a good fit for teleworking, even though they might be already teleworking, right? So once I do that, I can move on to section B. This is a great way of doing your applications as well. It's kind of this bite-sized environment. So I do this page first. Well, I can move on to the next page. Next page, pretty simple. It's this idea of like, here's our telework application. You can see we have a new one. And I can start entering in my information. So I can put in, oh, that's my personnel number. Sticking in my phone number. Let's say I'm employee number 1. Let's say this is my job title. And here's my name. Here's my phone number. And here's an email of your area administrator. So you can see I got a little button right here. I can search for the email address. Opens up the search feature. I'm not going to search any specific name. I come to the top here. I'm just going to select that, and that's going to be my supervisor for today. Again, if I'm my own supervisor, hey, there's my supervisor's phone in that. You can lean on that information again, pre-populate that information from those search results. Well, how many days per week am I looking to telework? Because we're doing that soft rollout, you may have 4 days at the office, 2 days from home. And then you rotate those days based on your staff, right? So this person wants 2 days, and let's say that we're ready for next week, okay? So based on that, I can pick 2 preferential days that I want to work from. So this is not guaranteed. This I want maybe a Thursday and a Friday. Those may be my preferred days, but I may not get those, right? The general idea is that we're getting 2 days per week. Where's our location? You see that there's a couple selections here. It could be another office, so you may be kind of spreading your workforce out across different locations. That's a good way of kind of mitigating extensive contact between groups. You can also have things like your home office. And then based on those selections, there's a number of things that might be attributed to that. So you can see with a home office, there may be 0 time that I'm traveling. And, well, how long does it take to commute from bed to the desk, right? Maybe 2 minutes. Or 3 feet in terms of how many miles we go here, right? And 1 minute from our bed to our office. Well, we can stick in our home address, add our city, and our state, and our zip, and all that kind of stuff, right? So childcare, stuff like that is also dependent. So in a remote world, you may not want to have your little rascal running around, or they may need attention. So these are the types of questions you can begin answering, right? Do you have dedicated high-speed internet? I'm sure most of you know by now, Zoom calls with the videos running and all that extra stuff running and the Teams meeting and the chat boxes and all that. These are the types of things that are going to begin popping up and dragging down your internet. So we may need yes to both of those. This is where the other parties can begin to come in. For this customer, we have union parties that are also wanting a say. There are also safety parties that want to say. So you can see that we go over general safety at home, stuff like that. We have a handbook that I've read, and you can continue on to section C. And again, it's bite-sized. It's this idea we give you a portion. You can read that portion, engage with that portion, go through that portion. And lastly, we have our terms and conditions here. Just like any good terms and conditions, we're going to read that. And we're going to sign off that, yeah, we've read that. And we're going to submit the application there, okay? So that kind of takes us to the end of our kind of little showcase of different applications you can start thinking about leveraging to kind of get that soft rollout to come into play. There's a lot of different aspects. There's a lot of kind of questionable areas that you may be engaging with because we haven't gone through this before, at least in our lifetimes, right? So I'm just going to look at chat here. We're going to get to some questions here because I've talked a lot and just see what people are asking here. Okay, so we have questions about notifications and delegations. So I'll quickly kind of come back to that here. So each application, as I kind of gone through it, these applications themselves have their own notification and delegation systems. So you can build in specific sets of rules for each application to engage with. Each user also has the ability to engage with their delegation system. So I'm just going to pop up the delegation tab here. The delegation tab is going to bring up all the categories and the applications that we have access to as a user here. And it's going to allow me to begin delegating out. So let's say that pretty common. Let's say that I want to go on vacation from, say, today, maybe till next week. So kind of a week time frame, right? And maybe I want all my social services applications to go to somebody. So you can see that it's currently not assigned to anybody. Well, I can assign that. Maybe we pick Penny here. Penny's going to be my delegate. I'm going to enable that, and I can submit that page. During this time frame, any actions from applications that have workflow or any actions in terms of like applications requiring me to interact with them are going to go to Penny in that time frame. It's a great way of doing that. Gives your employee the ability to do that. Each application, though, has its own set of these delegations and notifications that you can begin to leverage. And we can take part in automatically engaging those without the employee intervening. This means that if I'm sick and I'm not looking to log in and set my delegations, most applications that you can build out can have those rule sets predefined to ensure that we have an escalation to a next deputy or a handoff to another person to engage with. So we're just going to take a look at the next questions here. Okay, so we have a question about pricing here. So pricing. So I talked a lot about applications, application templates. So you can actually find all our pricing on our website, which is autocene.com. And we have pricing based on your organization over there. But what we do is we actually charge by the application. And by the application means that you can see I have a Telework application here. Well, an application could be an end-to-end process, or it could be a part of a process, depending on what it's doing. So our Telework application and agreement, that could be one application template out of what we are subscribing to. A different idea would be if I have an end-to-end procurement system that maybe orders staplers, but also orders maybe multi-million-dollar land leases, that could also be an application template by itself. So a template is all the user interfaces, the business logic that you stick in there, all the integrations that you stick in there, and if you have a workflow module attached to it, it could be unlimited steps. So basically whatever you pack in there, that is one application template. You have unlimited transactions, meaning you can have 30,000 people hitting that application, engaging with that, and you can have unlimited kind of integration connections, so you could have 30 different silos connected to one application for a dashboard. Totally doable. It's up to you on how you define that. Basically, whatever you want to stick in your application template, you are good to go to do that. We don't restrict you on that. So I'm just taking a look at if there's other questions here. Okay, so somebody asked about branding and all that. So branding, colors, everything that you've seen here today. Configuration is kind of key to Autocene. That means everything that you see, you can change the colors, you can move around, you can change to how you want it to look. As these applications, they all look different to what you want them to look like. It's up to you how you want those to look. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for the questions. Of course, if you have questions about kind of what you've seen today, you are more than happy to kind of go to our website and view kind of or reach out, if you will. Got lost for words. So if you do have questions, here's our page here for contact information. I'm Andrew Gotron, so I'm the first tab there. You can give me a call, you can email me, you can go to our site, you can contact directly there as well. So going through the Autocene support requests, we would be more than happy to discuss your questions that have kind of come out today or will come out after this demonstration of what we talked about. So don't hesitate to reach out. I kind of want to thank everybody for coming today. It's been a great showing for this webinar, so thanks for coming. I'm glad everybody's kind of thinking about getting back to the office, getting back to that normalcy that we're all used to. And I hope to catch you on the next webinar in a couple weeks here. I'm Andrew Gotron, and thanks for watching today.